2 summers ago, I had a pepper plant so far gone the leaves were curling brown at the tips. Most gardeners would have pulled it. Instead, I poured a half cup of something from my kitchen, cost me about 4 cents, around the base. 9 days later, it was setting flowers again. I tested it because I'd found the method in a USDA pamphlet from 1943, printed for victory gardeners, then quietly dropped from every extension recommendation after the war when the synthetic fertilizer plants needed a peacetime market. The numbers in my notebook don't lie. Stay with me to the end, because there's one of these 8 I only use after dark. And the chemistry behind why daylight ruins it surprised even me. Let me tell you who buried this, because it matters. The method I just described did not come from a guru or a folk tradition. It came from a USDA pamphlet printed in 1943 for victory gardeners, ordinary people growing food in their backyards while the war pulled every resource overseas. That pamphlet listed kitchen materials, Epsom salt, eggshells, wood ash, the stuff already sitting in your pantry. And it worked, because the government needed those gardens to produce. Then the war ended. And here is the part that I had to dig for. The munitions plants that had spent 4 years producing ammonium nitrate for explosives, that is nitrate chemistry, the same nitrogen backbone, suddenly had no bombs to fill. So between roughly 1945 and 1947, those plants were converted to agricultural fertilizer production. An entire industry woke up with enormous capacity and no civilian market. They built one. And the public extension officers, the ones funded to advise home gardeners, quietly shifted their recommendations. The kitchen amendments faded out of the literature. In their place came standardized, bagged, branded NPK. Buy it, apply it, buy it again next spring. I am not going to tell you nobody ever mentioned an eggshell again, but I will tell you what I found when I pulled that 1943 pamphlet and ran its methods against modern best practice in my test bed for 2 seasons. The old methods held up. Some of them beat the bag, and the stakes are simple. Gardeners traded free. Fast-acting materials for decades of buying something they did not need. Worse than the money, they lost the knowledge of how to rescue a plant in days instead of pulling it. My neighbour, not Carol, a different neighbour, spent close to $200 one season on commercial feed and rescue products. I spent pennies. And I have 22 years of records and a test bed by my deck, not a credential, and the notebook does not lie. So let me walk you through all 8. Here are the names first, then I will give you the how. Epsom salt solution, banana peel water, eggshell and vinegar, used coffee grounds, wood ash, cooled cooking water, aquarium change water, and an aerated microbe tea. That is the one I only use after dark, and I'm holding its chemistry until the end. Start with the pepper. The something from my kitchen was a dissolved Epsom salt solution. 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt in about 2 cups of water, stirred until it is gone, and a half cup poured at the base. Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate. And here is the science. Magnesium is the central atom of the chlorophyll molecule, the literal center. Without it, the plant cannot build chlorophyll. Photosynthesis stalls, and the older leaves go yellow, then brown and curl, because the plant is cannibalizing them to feed the new growth. That browning pepper was magnesium starved. It had shut its factory down. A tablespoon of Epsom salt costs about 4 cents. 9 days after I poured it, that plant was setting flowers again. This is exactly the kind of thing the extension columns stopped printing. Now, why does this work in days when a bag of granular feed takes weeks? That is the whole mechanism, and it is layer 2. Every one of these 8 delivers its nutrient already dissolved in water or already in a form a root can drink immediately. Solid compost and bagged granular fertilizer have to mineralize first. Soil microbes have to break them down before the plant can use a single molecule. That is a process of weeks. A dissolved magnesium ion does not wait. The roots take it up in hours. And I want to be honest with you about the word dead, because the title says dead plants come back to life. I do not mean a plant that is genuinely root-rotted dead. I mean a plant that looks past saving, curling, yellowing, dropping flowers, the kind most gardeners pull. When the collapse is a nutrient the plant cannot get, and you hand it that nutrient in soluble form, the visible recovery is fast enough that it looks like resurrection. It is not magic. It is uptake speed. Let me run through the rest with the dose and what I recorded. Banana peel water. I chop 2 or 3 peels, drop them in a quart jar of water, and let it steep about 48 hours, then pour the water at the base. Bananas are loaded with potassium. Potassium drives flowering and fruiting, and it regulates the stomata. Those are the little pores on the leaves that open and close to control water. A plant short on potassium makes weak, small fruit. On my test bed, the row I watered with banana steep set heavier fruit than the control, free from a peel I was going to throw out, eggshell and vinegar. This one is pure chemistry, and most people get it wrong. You cannot just crush dry eggshells into the soil and expect anything. The calcium is locked in carbonate and takes months to break down, sometimes longer than the plant lives. But drop crushed shells into plain white vinegar and they fizz. That reaction makes calcium acetate, which is water-soluble calcium the root can take up right away. Here is the science behind why that matters. Calcium does not move through a plant once it is placed. Once a leaf has it, it is stuck there. So blossom end rot, that black, sunken bottom on a tomato, is not a lack of calcium in your soil. It is the plant failing to move fresh calcium into the fruit at the moment it forms. Soluble calcium acetated fruit set fixes it. Dry shells will not. This is the kind of distinction the standard advice flattens used coffee grounds. And I have to correct the biggest myth in home gardening here. Everybody says coffee grounds acidify your soil. Used grounds do not. Fresh grounds are acidic, yes, but the brewing process pulls most of the acid out into your cup. Used spent grounds test close to neutral, around 6.5 pH. What they actually bring is nitrogen, around 2% by weight, plus they feed your earthworms, who do the real work. I work them in around leafy greens and let the worms carry them down. The acid scare kept people from a free nitrogen source for decades. Wood ash. If you have a fireplace or a fire pit, you have potassium and a liming agent. Wood ash is rich in potassium and it contains calcium carbonate, which raises pH the same way garden lime does. Now down here in the foothills, my native soil is heavy clay sitting at about 5.4, acidic. So a controlled dose of wood ash does double duty for me, feeding potassium and nudging the pH up toward where vegetables want it. But you use it sparingly, about 1 cup per plant, worked in, and you check your pH first with a meter. Overdo it and you will swing your soil alkaline and lock out other nutrients. I learned the limit by testing, not guessing. Cooled cooking water. When you boil vegetables or pasta, minerals leach out of the food and into the water. Potassium, phosphorus, trace elements, all dissolved and ready. The only rule is no salt. If you salted that pasta water, it is useless and harmful. Plain cooled vegetable or pasta water poured at the base is a free dilute feed you are about to send down the drain. I keep a jug by the sink. Aquarium change water. This one surprised me the first time I measured the difference. If you keep a fish tank, the water you change out every week is full of nitrogen from fish waste, plus living nitrifying bacteria, the beneficial kind that convert ammonia into plant-available nitrate. It is a free, mild liquid fertilizer that also seeds your soil with good biology. Just use water from a freshwater tank, not salt water. Every tank change, my plants got fed. And the 8th is the aerated compost and molasses microbe tea, the one I only apply after dark. I'm naming it now, but I'm holding the chemistry for the end of this video because the reason daylight ruins it is the single most surprising thing I tested all season, and it deserves its own moment. Stay with me for that. Now step back and notice the pattern across all 8 because this is layer 4, the part even people who know these tricks miss. Every one of these works for a specific, testable chemical reason. Magnesium for chlorophyll, soluble calcium for fruit, potassium for stomata, a pH shift from ash. They are not interchangeable folk remedies. You do not pour banana water on a magnesium problem and expect the pepper to recover. You match the material to the deficiency. The coffee grounds acid myth, the dry eggshell mistake, the wood ash overdose. Every one of those errors comes from treating these as vague, good for the garden gestures instead of precise tools. The extension columns stopped teaching the precision right along with the materials. They handed people a bag that said all-purpose, and all-purpose is exactly how you end up guessing. Now, before we keep going, I want to share something with you. if what I am walking you through here is making sense, and you are starting to see how much of yield is a measurement problem rather than a luck problem, then knowing the 8 materials is only half the battle. The other half is timing. Knowing which one to reach for in establishment, which in flowering, which in fruiting, and that is where the real numbers move. I laid all of that out in Chapter 5 of my book, The 3-Phase Feeding Calendar, which maps each growth phase to specific amendments with a diagram showing exactly what to apply when. It is called Steve's 30-Day Maximum Yield Protocol, $17 at stevesgardenbooks.com. If you're watching on your television, grab your phone and point it at the QR code on screen. Take your time finding it. I will be right here. If you're on a phone or laptop, the link is right in the description. All right, let us keep going, because now I want to answer the real question. If these 8 work this well, and they cost pennies, why did they vanish from the advice columns? Here is the science, and it is economic. After the war, the country had hundreds of plants built to make ammonium nitrate. That nitrate chemistry is the same chemistry behind munitions. Explosives need fixed nitrogen, and so do plants. When the fighting stopped around 1945 to 1947, those plants did not close. They were converted to make agricultural fertilizer, and they needed a peacetime market, a civilian market. Millions of home gardeners buying bagged feed every single season now follow the incentive. A bag of standardized NPK can be branded, shelved, priced, and reordered every spring. A banana peel cannot. A jar of eggshells dissolving in vinegar cannot. Aquarium water cannot. You cannot put a barcode on the leftovers in your kitchen. So the extension recommendations shifted, not because the kitchen methods failed, but because they could not be standardized for commercial scale. The 1943 pamphlet listed them. The post-war pamphlets quietly did not. And I want to be honest with you, because forbidden does not mean dishonest. Synthetic fertilizer is precise. It is reliable. It feeds billions of people, and I am not telling you it is worthless. The point is narrower than that. The home gardener, you, me, Carol next door, got steered away from free fast methods that work just fine on a backyard scale because there was no money in a banana peel. And the cost to you was real. Decades of buying feed you did not strictly need. And worse, the lost ability to rescue a failing plant in 9 days instead of yanking it out and replacing it. My foil neighbour spent $200 a season on product. I spent 4 cents on a pepper. That gap is the suppression sitting right there in the numbers. Now, stay with me, because I promised you the 8th one, the After Dark fertilizer, and the chemistry behind it surprised even me. Number 8 is an aerated compost and molasses tea. You take a few handfuls of finished compost, steep it in a bucket of water with 1 tablespoon of blackstrap molasses, and you run an aquarium air pump in it for about 24 hours. The molasses is sugar. It feeds the beneficial bacteria already in the compost, and the air keeps them multiplying. After a day, that bucket is not fertilizer in the chemical sense. It is alive. It is a dense population of living microbes. And here is the part I got wrong for a full season. The first year I brewed it, I poured it on at midday like everything else. Barely a difference. The reason is ultraviolet radiation. Direct sunlight sterilizes those microbes within minutes. UV kills them right on the leaf and the soil surface before they ever colonize. The daytime heat evaporates the drench before they can settle into the root zone, and the leaf stomata, those little pores, are closed tighter in the midday heat anyway. So I ran the comparison in my test bed. Same brew, same plants, split in half. Half went on at noon, half went on at dusk. After the sun was off the bed, the after dark row colonized overnight. The stomata were open, and in my notebook, it clearly outperformed the midday row. Better color, better set. That is the one living amendment of the 8. And a living amendment is exactly the thing you cannot pour into a bag and shelve for 2 years. You cannot brand it, which tells you everything about why you never heard about it. All right, before I let you go, every one of these 8 works because of a specific soil chemistry mechanism: magnesium for chlorophyll, soluble calcium for fruit, a pH shift from wood ash. Understanding that chemistry is what lets you pick the right fix instead of guessing. And that is exactly what I lay out in chapter 3 of the book, the Soil Reset chapter. I walk through pH, calcium, magnesium, and the rest through a chemistry teacher's lens with a diagram showing nutrient availability by pH so you can see at a glance what your soil can actually deliver. Now you have the rescue methods, extension advice, stop pruning, the full system, all 115 pages, is in Steve's 30-day maximum yield protocol. $17 at stevesgardenbooks.com. If you're on the big screen, go ahead and scan that QR code now. No rush. Take a moment to pull your phone out and aim it. If you're reading this on a phone, the link is waiting in the description. So that is 8 kitchen materials that feed a struggling plant fast, plus the living after dark brew that the bag and shelf model could never sell you. Now you know the rescue methods that quietly disappeared from the extension columns after the war. Your conditions might be different, so do what I always do. Test one of these on a single plant against the rest of your row and let your own notebook tell you the truth before you commit to the whole bed. Next time I will show you the $2 pantry powder I use to stop ants from farming aphids on my peppers, another old trick nobody sells anymore. All right, that's what I have for you today. I'll see you in the next one.